When it comes to transferable skills you pick up in radio, it's hard to put it better than this.
Telling a story is telling a story.
And when the career you've loved for years starts to go sour.
I was stopped in the hallway and said, "You want your air check? You're not as good as you think you are." And then the PD kept walking.
It makes sense to have a good look around.
I can't keep doing this for the rest of my life. What's my next step? Multimedia is now becoming a thing. Just being an expert in radio wasn't going to be good enough.
There could be a way of working that's easier on those around you.
Working nights, working overnight, sleeping during the day. A lot of time I missed with the family. I'm glad I've got that time back.
A career move that also still scratches that itch that got you into radio in the first place.
It's all just telling stories.
May your best years be ahead of you. I'm Andy Marr, and this is Off Mic, Life After Radio. Matt Whittemore is a media advisor based in Sydney, Australia. Before he took on that job, though, he worked in broadcast media, first for years in radio and then moving across to TV, where he worked on Australia's #1 breakfast TV show, Sunrise. In this episode, we'll talk about his radio highs and lows and what skills he picked up in radio that he still uses to this day. Matt, so good to see you, mate. How you been?
Mate, I've been very well. Been too long. It's been we've had a few radio school reunions over the years, but class of 97 seems a long time ago now.
Before we got to radio school, I was very impressed when I heard the story about how you came to be in the class of 97 because you almost weren't.
No, I got rejected, and luckily at the time, I had a girlfriend who was far more assertive than I was. And I was happy just to let it slide. I thought, no, it's okay. I'm not that good anyway, just on community radio. I'll try again next year. She insists I go back and ask, why was I rejected, so it can be a learning thing. I was in my 20s. Learning wasn't big on my agenda. But, I just did what I was told. Thanks for letting me know. If you've got any feedback on my air check, I'd love to hear it. And, it turns out, a few days passed, and then I got a phone call from Jim. I don't know if it was Jim or Lucienne. It might have been Lucienne, actually. Lucienne Joy, who was the head of radio at the time, telling me that no one actually remembered hearing my air check. So I couldn't actually remember why it was rejected. Could I get to the 2WS studio, which was way out west back then?
Yeah.
By tomorrow afternoon, please.
Oh.
It was like we heard it, we actually liked it. We couldn't think why we would have rejected it. It clearly went from one pile to the next without being heard. We apologise, but second round applications closed tomorrow. That was one of the big lessons I learned early on. Always ask for feedback. It's hugely beneficial. So
certainly paid dividends. And then after the 8 odd months that we were in North Ryde at AFTRS, Australian Film, Television and Radio School, we all went our separate ways, and you found your way down to a little town that I had hitherto never heard of.
No, neither had I.
I think most of us were in a very similar boat to that, but you found yourself in Colac.
Having grown up in Sydney, a city of 3 million, 4 million people, I found myself in Colac, which I think at the time was a town of maybe 12, 15,000. So it was a massive culture shock. But in the end, I thoroughly enjoyed my time.
And so what role were you doing at 3CS?
I wanted to be an announcer, but I couldn't actually get a gig as an announcer straight out of radio school. So I took a gig as a copywriter. And then when people went on holidays, enthusiastically threw up my hand to do whatever shift was going. And Adam Barrett, who I may still be in radio today and has made quite a successful career landing up on the Sunshine Coast, the Ballarat. He was doing breakfast and I was doing nights, and I was a little bit older and probably didn't quite fit that night vibe. And the PD at the time, Karen sort of asked if we'd mind swapping. I think Adam was happy to get rid of the early starts and I was happy to move into breakfast. And that became my spot. And then I was lucky enough to sort of do breakfast radio for the next few stations along the journey, which I loved.
Yeah, so you did brekkie there, you did brekkie in Tamworth.
Tamworth, yeah. I was employed as a breakfast announcer in Tamworth, which was nice. After
that was Shepparton. Is it Sun FM?
Yes, it was Sun FM at the time. Similar story to Colac. I went down as just the daytime announcer and music director from memory, or I had a secondary role as you did. But then I think Kel, who was doing breakfast at the time, was again a little bit over the hours. I was happy to do a swap, so it became Matt's morning crew. We had it was actually fun. This is the first time I got to be a part of a morning crew. From sort of 6 to 7, I was on my own, and then from 7 o'clock it was a crew, and that was a lot of fun. We just got to just basically play with innuendo constantly with every promotion we had. The Valley's Fastest Direction was one of my favourites.
Okay.
Pitching a tent. Pitching a tent.
Of course.
You know, if you wanted, you had to win a camping set from one of the local outdoor places, and they said, we're thinking of a promotion. And we said, well, who could pitch a tent the fastest? And that became the Valley's Fastest Direction. And, you know, it's juvenile and stupid, but it's fun.
That's, FM radio 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Actually, it's kind of FM radio today.
It's swinging back. It makes me all nostalgic.
Yeah. So was Sun FM Shepparton the first time you'd stepped into a management role as the music director?
It was an assistant music director role. My first role in management was my next step, which was Central Coast, where I became music director for 2GO and daytime announcer for 1013 CFM at the time.
Yeah, I remember hearing you. I was living in Sydney at the time, and I heard a couple of your shifts, and it was like, there's Matt. That's awesome. Yeah. It was nice to have you within broadcasting earshot.
It was exciting to be within broadcasting earshot of Sydney. I kind of, you know, like you want to work your way up the ladder. Yeah. And I thought this is the moment. I'm on the precipice. I'm on the edge of achieving that dream of being a Sydney radio announcer. But I think it was just while I was there, I didn't quite click with the second PD I had there, and I didn't quite click with that very formulated style of radio. It wasn't what I wanted to do. I was doing days, and I basically had the script of this is what you say every break throughout your shift. At this, we talk about this. At this, we talk about this. At this, we talk about this. And every time I tried to get a little bit creative or do something a little bit different, I'd get a rap over the knuckles. And at some point when I was asking for an air check, and I was stopped in the hallway and said, you want your air check? You're not as good as you think you are. And then the PD kept walking. I thought, okay, maybe this isn't for me.
Oh, man.
that was so I got that taste of, you know, that kind of high pressure, if you like, consultant heavy radio, and I kind of balked. So I became the PD down at Power FM.
Power FM Nowra.
Power FM Nowra. I was PD down there from I think 2005 to 2008. But yeah, I kind of thought, okay, what's my next step? I can't keep doing this for the rest of my life. I'm still only in my 30s. CHR radio is behind me. I didn't want to be doing AC radio for the next 40 years. Mm-hmm. Where do I go now?
You and I have something similar in our backgrounds where we both worked on ill-fated and possibly ill-advised digital ventures pulled together by former rock managers who owned radio stations.
Ooh, yes.
So Glenn Wheatley owned that one, right?
He did.
He was the
Glenn Wheatley's idea.
The late manager of John Farnham, Little River Band, Australian Crawl.
Yep, bass player for Masters Apprentices.
Yes.
One of the guys behind Eon FM, and, you know, so a big name in music and radio. And I always loved the idea of satellite radio in the States, which was Glenn's idea.
So he was going for an Aussie Sirius XM thing, was he?
Exactly right. But I think February 2008, I signed on to Stripe. I think the first green shoots of the global financial crisis started coming through in March of 2008, April 2008. And by 3/4 of the way through the year, money ran out. First time I got to meet Glenn Wheatley in person was when he told us it was all over. So that was a bittersweet. That was a bittersweet moment. But he did want to tell us in person, which was a lovely thing. So that was probably one of my favourite jobs of all time.
Yeah, I had a similar experience about 8 years earlier. They were talking about the .com crash at our launch party.
Yeah, it's not a good omen.
After Stripe wound up, what was next for you?
Since leaving Stripe, I kind of thought, I gave it a bit of thought. I thought, what, I should probably look at transitioning into, say, news radio, something, a little more grown up. Mm-hmm. And while I was at 2ST Barrel, because it's so close to Sydney. There's a lot of retired radio people, lawyers, like big wigs from entertainment and all across. And Ian Holland popped in one Saturday morning while I was doing a Saturday morning shift and introduced himself. Dutchy was, at the time, he's a bit of a Sydney radio legend. At the time, he was program director for 2GB, which is the big station here. So we had a chat, and I mentioned that I was looking to kind of transition from music radio into news, and so we kept up our communications. He'd popped in occasionally when he heard me on the wireless, and I kind of got a little shuffle into 2GB as a producer role there to kind of start that second part of my radio journey.
And that was quite a jump in style, but also finally getting you into the big market. So
yes,
killer.
Yeah, working at 2GB at the time was it was Jones at breakfast, Hadley in the morning, Chris Smith middle of the day, Ben Fordham was new on drive, and it was in Sydney. It was just a powerhouse. If you are going to learn, if you are going to step into something new and learn something new, and learn a new direction, you'll learn from the best. Despite what you might think of the politics that come out of the station, they were the number one station for a reason. The way they got those ratings, the way they told the stories, the way they did it.
Another guest that I've had on the podcast who mentioned you glowingly was someone else who you worked with at Tamworth, Mary Lou Stevens, or was then Mary Lou Thorpe, who's now living a marvellous life as a slow-travelling author throughout the world.
Mary Lou's fantastic, and her books are wonderful too if you get a chance to read them. But
I've got one over here. I'm halfway through, Sex, Drugs and Meditation.
Her first one. Yeah.
Strong recommend. Yeah, she said it must have been hard for Matt working in talk radio with all those big egos and the crazy politics of it all. But I remember you telling me at a school reunion about a fun encounter that you'd had with Steve Price where he spotted you with a bit of glitter in your hair or on your face.
Yes. No, I've got 4 girls, and my youngest was quite young at the time. We were playing dress ups that particular day, and I think I ended up with some sort of glitter or fairy dust on my face. Had a little nap, went off to work, and as I got there, we were sitting in the production room, and Steve kept looking up at me, and I'd say, "What?" And he said, "You got a little bit of glitter on your face." And I said, "Oh, that's actually not glitter; it's fairy dust." And he said, "Yeah, you probably want to wash it off." I said, "Yeah, okay, I'll do that." But no, I think that's only because we were expecting like Joe Hockey or someone in that night. We were actually expecting a big guest because Steve himself is a father of girls, and as gruff as he can sound, early on, I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, but early on in my time with him, I just overheard him having a conversation with his daughters, and it was like, yeah, he's okay. So yeah.
Now, Matt, I'm looking at the selector log here, and there's a liner coming up that we need to do. But can you just do a quick forward sell for us? Get us across to the ad break. What do you got?
Okay. 7:24. This is CFM. Winner takes all with Battle of the Sexes in just a minute. The Hunter's not far away, and we're going to check the traffic with Bazza and Wazza out on the S3 very, very soon.
Mwah.
Is that it?
Beautiful. Yeah. Still to come with Matt Whittemore, his move away from radio, then his move away from broadcast media altogether, and what skills he took with him along the way that make him an asset to this day.
It's telling stories and just basically going over the fence and working in media from the other side.
Now, after your time producing the Steve Price Show on 2GB, you then took the big step to move away from radio. What prompted that?
I'd been in radio at this stage, getting into sort of 2011, 2012. So I'd been in radio for sort of 15 years, different levels and, music, news, management, on air. So I'd pretty much done everything I'd wanted to do, but I also realised that the world was changing. Multimedia was now becoming a thing. Just being an expert in radio wasn't going to be good enough. It wasn't going to get me anywhere. Even online, even social, you needed to know how to use video and visuals to tell the story, not just audio. The beauty of working somewhere like 2GB is that you get contacts, you meet people, you talk to people. And one of those people was the line producer of Sunrise.
The breakfast show on Channel 7, leading network in Australia.
Yeah, I was working overnights with Andrew Moore at the time. And
Andrew
one of his
Moore.
good mates was Dougie, who was a line producer. Oh, yeah. And Dougie was a line producer for Sunrise. So, we all kind of got talking. We'd go out occasionally for breakfast at the Star of a Friday when he'd finished his midnight shifts on 7 and we'd finished our midnight shifts on 2GB.
Yeah.
We'd often catch up for a breakfast and an after work a drink. We got chatting, and it's all about networking. And I became, ironically, for a white middle-aged suburban man, became a bit of a diversity choice for the Sunrise production team at the time.
How so?
Oh, they were very young, and the Sunrise audience, and again, this is a key to communication in general. The Sunrise audience was somewhat older. It's free-to-air television, which was sort of petering away slowly, but the sort of audience that was watching Sunrise were older, middle-aged and up, had families, like their politics, like their sport, and they basically needed someone who said they needed a boring old middle-aged guy who had a family, lived in the suburbs, liked politics and sport. And it was like, well, I tick all those boxes. I'm a boring middle-aged white guy. I slipped into that role like a glove.
So what did you take from radio into that role? Were there any particular things that you learned along the way that were really valuable in the role in Sunrise?
Oh, look, telling a story is telling a story. How you set up a narrative is pretty much the same. I understood market appeal, which is why I kind of got the job I did. I understood the market of Sunrise. I knew who they were talking to, and I knew how to talk to them. That was the one advantage I had over the other producers, who were all, very young and enthusiastic. A lot of them were straight out of uni, but, didn't quite understand who they were talking to. So the big thing I learned from radio, I guess, when I first moved to Sunrise was I understood the audience. It's not about the story that I want to hear. It's about the story that the audience and the listener wants to hear, or the viewer. I did keep calling them the listener in TV land for way too long. They said, it's a viewer. I said, yes, it is. Sorry. Force a habit.
Oh, easy to make. And then after that, you jumped out of broadcast altogether and into a media advisor role. What prompted that?
The desperate need for money more than anything else.
Yeah.
Which sounds awful. No, I felt my time in radio came to a natural conclusion. I'd kind of ticked every box I wanted to tick. Was I successful as I kind of hoped I was going to be when I first went into radio? No, not by a long shot. I was meant to be Kyle Sandilands by this stage, but clearly, spoiler alert, didn't happen. And then it was the same thing with Sunrise. Sunrise is an intense show. Like 8 years on a morning breakfast show is a lot. Like the need, like you're doing 3.5, 4 hours of live television every day, and you need to constantly come up with stories and content and people to talk to, and you need to come up with good ones because we were the number one show in the country, and we needed to stay the number one breakfast show in the country. So it was relentless and it was intense, but it was when it was great, it was great. One of the producers I worked with at Sunrise, who I got along particularly well with, she made the move over to government. So I was talking to her a lot about her new role. Positions kept coming up, and she kept sort of saying, there's a spot here if you want it. And I said, I just want to do one Summer Olympics. 2020, unfortunately, it was a COVID Olympics, but I got to go to Tokyo in 2021 and cover those games, and that was extraordinary. And that was like, okay, I've done a Summer Games.
So what does a day look like for you now, apart from hopefully a bit more of a sleep in than you would have gotten with Sunrise and breakfast for all those years?
Oh, public holidays. I don't like, if people in the media are watching this podcast, I don't know if this is for people in the media or people outside of it, but public holidays are amazing.
Yeah.
I'd never had them before. Sundays, weekends. No, my family's enjoying seeing me again, which is nice.
Yeah.
They're lovely. Yeah. I'm spending a lot more time with them, and they seem really, really nice. Yeah, it's all just telling stories. So government, not as creative and not as fun stories most of the time. But again, it's telling stories and just basically going over the fence and working in media from the other side. My day is generally, you're monitoring Radio in the morning, you get your regular media reports in. So your first hour will be just going through what's in the papers, what the radio stations are talking about, maybe doing a scan around and listening to them, making sure that no one's talking ill of any department that you're associated with.
So speaking of department, you're with the Department of Customer Service.
In New South Wales, yeah.
What is that? I haven't heard of that one down here in Victoria. I don't know what exactly that is.
We cover quite a broad scope, but I guess most people would associate it with Service New South Wales.
Right, yes.
Which is the one-stop government services shop. If you need to generally make a government transaction or a transaction with the government, driver's license, boat license, all that sort of stuff, you go to a Service New South Wales centre, and that comes under the blanket Department of Customer Service. There's a whole bunch of other stuff sitting under that as well: safe work, fair trading, a whole bunch of other departments. It's a broad, and that's the thing I like about it. It's a broad remit, because I am easily bored.
Well, you wouldn't have a boring morning then, because if you're monitoring all media for people across that many portfolios and that many different government departments, that's a lot.
It is. It keeps you busy, but the biggest challenge I guess I found working in government was it's so collaborative, because it's government, because it has to be right. When I was on the broadcasting side of media, I was very much of the attitude: ask forgiveness, not permission.
Yep.
In government, no, that's not a good way to make things happen.
Is it much more slow moving than broadcast media, or how's the pace go for you?
Not some days. Some days are insane, just like broadcast days. If you've got a crisis or some sort of emergency, or you need to turn around a package or a program, and again, the collaboration still exists. So you're reaching out to people, getting their input, pulling it all together and trying to push it out as quick as you can. So there are still moments of crisis, not as many as in television and radio, thankfully, but I do still enjoy those little days where the adrenaline levels are elevated, because that's kind of the thing you love about TV and radio. It's that, it's the nervousness, it's the energy, it's the adrenaline.
You need a little bit of stress just to tickle that chakra.
You do. Yeah. It's good for you. You're alive.
Yes. So what is it that you would miss most about radio?
Oh, look, I just enjoyed showing up to work and just being paid to have fun. And I guess when that started to sort of taper away is when I started to turn up to work and I was told to make it sound like I'm having fun.
Uh-huh.
I was like, can't I just have fun and that will come through the speakers? But no, that wasn't the thinking at the time. So I kind of, I miss the fun. I do miss that moment right before going live. Those moments before the show starts, in talk radio especially. But even on a breakfast show, that you've got your show, you've got the plan, you know how you want it to go, and you're about to kick it off. That first break, you want to nail it, and everything's turning.
Newsreader gives you the out cue. News time, 6:04, and boom.
Oh, just even then, yeah, that's what I miss.
What don't you miss?
Oh, look, I guess I don't miss the relentless nature of it. I don't miss the shift work. That was the other thing that started to get me with Sunrise. A lot of the shift work, like I'm in my 50s now. When I was young, I used to quite enjoy silly long days. Like when I was at Shepparton, I would be doing breakfast radio. So I'd be up at 4:00 in the morning. I'd be rehearsing some nights. I'd be playing a gig until 3 a.m. I'd sleep for a couple of hours. I'd get up and I'd play cricket on the Saturday. And it was just, I loved it. I look back now and I just sort of think, oh God, I'm so tired.
Yeah.
And again, having weekends, and I might have been a bit lighthearted about it earlier, but I do miss a lot of time I missed with the family, working nights, working overnight, sleeping during the day. I'm glad I've got that time back now, but I do it all again in a heartbeat.
So looking back on your radio career and even looking out into the radio medium now, who's the radio professional that you have the most admiration for?
Ooh. When I think about it, I wanted the career that Brendan Jones has. So Amanda and Jonesy, that was a career I wanted. You you do the hard yards, you apply your trade through the regions, you get to a cap city station, and eventually you get to be a part of a breakfast team. I just admire the way he stuck with it. He plugged away, and where he saw opportunity, he grabbed it. So ask that question on the spot. I will say Brendan Jones and our very good friend Clinton Maynard, who is still going strong in talk radio and living his passion. And every now and again, he'll fire in a little media inquiry to us as well. So, yeah, he's killing it and just doing what he loves. And he's had quite a storied career as well. So, yeah, Brendan Jones and Clinton Maynard will be my two guys.
Yeah, well, Clinton, an amazing news guy. I remember when we were at radio school, he was the kid of the flock.
He used to do the top 40 show on the community radio station we both worked at before afters. So,
okay, yeah.
Yeah, we've been kicking around the same circles for a long time.
On the people that you admire, who would be the manager that you worked under that you have the most respect for?
Program. Look, to be honest, I think Jason Matthews was fantastic. He sort of took me into the Central Coast. And I think he's now working up around Brisbane, does a bit around SEN and what have you. So
was he
Jason
program
Matthews,
director or GM? Or what
he was
his role?
program director. Director. Phil Bradley in Shepparton really kind of helped me a lot in my early days there. He was fantastic. He didn't let me make mistakes where, obviously the station was bought into disrepute or anything bad was going to happen. But he allowed me to learn, much like Karen, my first PD at Colac, let me do. They just let me be me.
Yeah.
Gave me enough rope not to hang myself, but just, when I needed to be reined in, they could see where I'm going because they were obviously much smarter than I was and would kind of just advise me that maybe this is a better path. But I guess that's a common through the three of them. Karen, Phil, and Jason all let me be me and encouraged me to do that. Also, Nick Lowther, who was my PD at 2ST Nowra when Stripe collapsed and I sort of shot back. He sent out a lifeline. He was originally brought in. It's a little story. I hope he doesn't mind me telling it. But I didn't get along with the newly installed group manager who was overseeing everything. There were a couple of announcers she didn't like on air, and she wanted me to. Well, I hate this expression. I always have ever since. But this was the first time I'd heard it: manage up or manage out. And I refused to because they were good. They were good kids. There was good talent. I just wanted to let them grow and discover, like I had the opportunity to do.
Yeah.
And anyway, I was called into the office of the GM at this particular at this station, and I was told that we've got a new PD arriving soon, which confused me because I was the PD. And then I was told that no, I was going to move to Muswellbrook.
Right.
Yes, I just said no. I don't think I am. I don't think. I looked at the GM. I said, could she do this? And he was like, well, no, actually, technically she can't. Good. So what could have been a really, really awkward situation because I wasn't going to leave. So I was no longer PD. Nick came in as a new PD, but he was super cool about it. And we both just really got along, acknowledged the situation, moved forward. He's been a great mate ever since. And when Stripe went under, he was the one that threw me that lifeline back at 2SD to help me back in. So that's just a stand-up guy, really, really, and a great operator too. He's sort of running things out at the ABC in regional New South Wales now, and yeah, doing really, really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the people you meet, right, in radio that you do miss. That's the thing with moving through stations.
Yeah.
You work with these incredible people. You work with these amazing people. They're creative and fun and vibrant and, they're on-air people. They're characters. They're big personalities. And then you move on to the next town and I miss so many people that I've worked with over the journey. I've been very lucky to work with some great people. Not all of them are big names, but they're big, beautiful personalities and wonderful people. And I miss a whole bunch of people everywhere I've been.
Yeah, we're a special kind of people, radio people. I don't know why I'm saying we. I mean, that's a funny thing. Like I haven't walked into a radio station for a few years now, but you still sort of always feel like a radio person in some little part of your body.
Yeah, I love it. There's nothing like it. It's a great medium. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how it evolves. The media landscape is a challenge for everyone, but I would never, ever call the death knell on any of them. They evolve, they change, they grow as as we all do.
Well, long may there be stories for you to tell. Matt Whittemore, so good to see you, mate. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
No, wonderful catching up. Thanks, Andy. Lovely to see you, mate. And thanks for the invite. This has been fun.
That is Matt Whittemore. Talk about a purpose-driven career. The man is born to tell stories. He does it so well. Hope you like that as much as I did. And for another story of someone who took their skills from radio into another medium, you'll love UK-based filmmaker Matt Schichter.
That allowed me to go basically travel the world for 3 years interviewing enormous celebrities, everyone from like De Niro and The Rock to Lady Gaga and Taylor Swift. And then that one thing led to another, and then radio just never happened again.
Now, if there's something about transitioning away from radio into a new career that I haven't been covering in these podcasts, I'd love to know. You can drop me a line in the YouTube comments, or you can catch me on the socials, Instagram, Facebook, or Blue Sky. You can look up the podcast name Off Mic, Life After Radio. I'm Andy Marr. May your best years be ahead of you.